Hi everyone, my name is Carolina and I'll be moderating today's Q&A with Frank Piller, a professor at Aachen University and co-director of the Institute for Technology and Innovation Management. Today, Frank will reveal winning strategies for Industry 4.0 in the post-pandemic world and answer any questions you might have at the end. To do so, please type your questions in the box on the right-hand side. We'll also share the slides with you shown today at the end of the podcast, as well as over email. You can also find it on the right-hand side in the handout section, along with the white paper written recently by Frank Piller. Frank, over to you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Carolina. Welcome everyone in Teleland. It's my pleasure to be with you, and I'm really looking forward to discussing and getting your questions afterwards. Very briefly about myself, I'm professor at Aachen University. You see it, it's a dominant design of professors nowadays in all these Zoom and WebEx and webinar meetings with many books, but they are real, it's not a virtual background. And I do research about technology and innovation management with a strong emphasis on process innovation in Industry 4.0. We'll hear more about this shortly. Also engaged in a couple of companies, also will mention one or two examples in a minute. With the leadership network, I do two, I think, great classes. One more new one on intelligent engineering, digitalization of the engineering function, and a very established one we now are running for more than 20 times on leadership for the smart factory of the future. And the content of today's talks more or less builds on the second one, but will also have some aspects on digital engineering and digitalization of the engineering process. So what I will now start with in, I think, 2 minutes, normally I need an entire day. But I will share with you our smart industry, smart factory framework, as it somehow is giving you the background on our hypotheses on how Corona has changed our discussion of Industry 4.0. So when we talk about Industry 4.0, we often, or many, start to talk about technologies. And this is what we also do, but we really don't go too much into detail here, as those technologies are very different for different industries, different corporate settings. However, I would say there's one common denominator of what is really the underlying technology of Industry 4.0, and that's connectivity. And you see here on the right-hand side a complicated definition. That's the official German approved definition of Industry 4.0. And there you see it's really about connecting information in real time among actors in a larger open ecosystem. And in this older picture by SAP, what they say is the fourth industrial revolution is not digitalization. Therefore, the term digital transformation actually is a little bit misleading, but it's networking, our ability to connect assets and machine, people with machines, people and so on. And really the ability to make these connections, it's what's driving the discourse of Industry 4.0, which, by the way, is also driving all the hype around artificial intelligence, as in many instances, these are not the algorithms, but connected silos of data that previously were not connected, that is really enabling a lot of the value creation with artificial intelligence or machine learning. So from this underlying technical foundation, we have now 4 pillars. One is what we call smart assets, connecting equipment and generating digital twins and digital shadows are somehow the underlying base for. Second pillar, smart operations. In the end, doing better decision making by data-driven operational excellence, but also by making workers and employees smarter. The third pillar is about supply chain. So the first one was more the factory perspective. Now we come to a supply chain perspective. There are different ideas in open manufacturing networks, connected, more resilient supply chains. And finally, we are on the layer of manufacturing platforms, industrial data cloud, value creation in these clouds, really connecting the previous aspects with very different governance systems. On top of this is a business model, and that's a question I always challenge executives in. So as normally as manufacturing executives, we often think, well, we got a business model from our from sales, from business development, and now we have to implement it. But I think what we saw in really leading companies, it was that also manufacturing was enabling a new business model and some are pushing the entire organization. Therefore, the question, what is really the business model we want to enable, one of the most critical ones. I go into more detail of this later on. And we can look on this picture, and now the smart factory framework is already finalized from two perspectives. The traditional perspective was from the left-hand side around industrial efficiency, operational equipment efficiency, quality, energy savings, and so on. This is great, but I always say a little bit boring. That was perhaps a mistake we did actually here in Germany, that we looked a lot on Industry 4.0 exactly from this left-hand side. We also can look on it from the right-hand side, meaning really saying, how can we enable more differentiation or exploration of a new value logic? Then we talk about agility, customization, resilience, assortment flexibility. And you will see in a minute that one of our propositions is that we really now learned that if we just look on it on operational efficiency, it's not enough. We really have to ask ourselves what on higher, more strategic objectives can Industry 4.0 contribute to. So this is a general framework, and in some companies this is implemented in different ways. So with the leadership network, we are sometimes guests at Porsche, both in Leipzig, or we will go at the end of this year, hopefully, to their latest, most advanced plant in Stuttgart. And Porsche has a production 4.0 system, and we can't go into detail, but their lead objectives is it's smart, it's lean, and it's green. Similar, their neighbors in Stuttgart, Daimler, and there's a nice video on the internet which you can look up by yourself on their latest factory concept called Factory 5.6, also with elements on workability, strong focus on sustainability, but also still flexibility, but also quite some operational efficiency still, I would say. In Germany, we also have a vision as a nation. And this has been defined by the so-called Platform Industry 4.0. This is our highest stakeholder network, more than overall 100 companies, many professors, big unions, labor representatives, and so on, are coming together in different work groups to really discuss and steer our debate. It's a standardization part, but very much, I would say, a sense-making part, an inspiration part to really see what is happening. I'm part of the academic advisory board of this platform, very proud to be one of the very, very few management professors, as all the others are great engineering professors there. And in these platforms, there's one work group I'm also a member from on business models. And out of this business model work group, actually the results on our 10 Corona theses I'm presenting now are coming from. But the platform also last year launched a new 2030 vision for Industry 4.0. And again, it would take too much time to go into detail, and actually I don't have to do it, as if you go on to the website and the URL you see here, there's a very nice animated website to really deep dive in all these aspects. Which very briefly, on the lower left, interoperability, networking. That's the old value proposition of Industry 4.0, really creating standards, regulatory frameworks to enable data exchange in real time. However, this is new to the vision, autonomy. We want to do it in a way that we keep our autonomy both as a nation, but you would want to keep your autonomy as a company. And not sharing too much, but really having strategically control on the data you share, on your dependence of perhaps manufacturing platform operated by third parties. And finally, but not too surprising, sustainability with regard to ecology, but also with regard to social participation, job safety, and so on. But this was pre-COVID-19. And our task in this work group was to investigate what is changing because of COVID-19. And out of this, we came up with 10 propositions, which are now quickly present. If you go to the slides, you can read the full text, and Carolina also uploaded you our short white paper, where this is written in a shorter narrative. And I also had the opportunity in the last weeks to discuss this with quite a number of manufacturing executives organized by the Leadership Network, where we met in much more personal online meetings than this one to really discuss how did your smart factory vision change in times of COVID-19. So what were your old priorities? What is the Corona impact? Were some of the hurdles now easier to take, or are new hurdles evolving? So this somehow informs what I want to present. These are the 10 theses presented in this working paper, and they are not my personal view, but really the result of a stakeholder discussion and 7 wonderful co-authors, all of them from industry or consulting, that together came up with what I'm now presenting. Well, thesis number 1 is not surprising, and you heard it many, many times. Because of Corona, we really got a boost for digitalization and digital business models. And I think some of you saw these Twitter or Facebook feed, who led your digital transformation, the CEO, the CIO. Oh, no, it was COVID-19. And we laugh about it, and we think it's so true. But of course, it's not the truth. If this really COVID-19 was leading digital transformation in your company, you had nothing before. It facilitated some trends. It enhanced some initiatives that were there before. So let's look at just 2 of the core challenges from a study by Accenture, but for me, it makes a lot of sense. And they asked more than 1,300 executives and asked them, what are your top 2 challenges? Challenge number 1, an unspoken disagreement among top managers about the goals of digital transformation, smart manufacturing. And here, actually, COVID-19 may have helped. It may have helped us to really overcome, to let's say, foster managerial sense-making, to really get people on the top together and say, yeah, that's really a vision. Secondly, and here I think COVID didn't help at all, a divide between the digital capabilities to support a pilot. And this is what many, many companies are doing at the moment. They are piloting digital transformation in manufacturing, but these capabilities required for piloting are very different to the capabilities required to scaling it up. And here, actually, I would argue, is still a big divide. Think about it. We talk about digital transformation, creating. What does it mean? We transform it. Well, we create a new core, a new business model, a new operating model for our company. But if you look what you did, or at least many of you, I would say, in the last weeks, it was not transforming your company. It was pure survival. And you may have seen this cover of The Economist a couple of weeks ago, where they talk about the 90% economy. And all the recent data we now have from academics and economists are exactly that we will go out of the crisis with less growth, but also with less business. And the economists say we will go out of the crisis with just 90% of the existing economy. And that's the biggest drop of output we ever had after World War II. And so if we get the 90% economy, you really will focus on the core. You really focus on reorganizing, streamlining your company to really do what you can do in a more efficient way, to get just more sales of products you already have. But you will not focus on transformation as to transform. You need really a blank mind. And so on reorganization, you do activities like outlined here by McKinsey that have a quick time to impact and a high impact on earnings. And this could be looking on your assortment, range, sizing, introducing an e-commerce shop. Great things, but having an e-commerce shop is no digital transformation of your business model at all. Transforming, creating a new core means to really reimagine your organization, to define who we are, how we work, how to grow. This really is much more difficult in this time, as this demands radical innovation. And radical innovation, and as an innovation researcher, I can tell you we have lots of data on this, means you need a cognitive slack, some overcapacity. That's exactly what we don't have in the situation. So yes, we will see a long-term boost, definitely, from what is happening, but it's challenging to realize it. As there's another element. We should all do this by being on cognitive distance in your home office, as I assume many of you will still be in your home office and follow from there. I'm here in Aachen on the board of a company called Capus & Partner. They are an architecture firm and a planning firm, and they got me on the board as their claim is we build buildings for innovation. And they actually have a large share in the market of building R&D labs in Germany, but they also do global office design for collaborative work. And so the idea of Capus and their value proposition was we do these great collaborative offices that help you to transform your company as they really, enhance face-to-face collaboration. Well, and then we told them, stay at home, you go to the home office. Well, and now, how should we know how to survive there? We know how to do our daily job, but how to change our company. And the challenge is really big, as we know from lots of research that 80% of all radically innovative ideas arise really from face-to-face communication. And I would say to get them implemented, it's even more. And this is a slide I normally show to my students. It's a famous Allen curve. Tom Allen was a famous professor at MIT, one of the early pioneers in innovation management, and really showed that the separation in distance, measured in meters, not kilometers, in meters, of people in an office environment is influencing the probability that they talk to each other. And the closer you sit to each other, the more you'll talk. And traditionally, we tried to build collaborative offices, open spaces, to have more of this communication. And now, with everyone in the home office, this really is tough. So at Capus, we'll think about how is the new office looking like, and many of you will do it. But we know already that this will be a core enabler that we really come to digital transformation and utilize the experiences we had in the last months to really go forward. It will not be an automatic mechanism. But of course, we also saw extraordinary abilities, and we can do capabilities at this time. So for example, Dyson building, ventilators out of nothing. Ford redesigning its motor design to do ventilators. Or in Germany, a small company, Melita, they invented the coffee filter, and they made it to the New York Times as they really got the capability to change to their skills in making coffee filters to make masks. And it's actually not just making two gummy straps on a filter that you get this mask. And at the same time, we saw these remarkable achievements in companies. And now if you work for a larger organization, you know how long it takes you to really do something new, to launch a totally different product, line unconnected to what you did before. And I think this is why we are confident that we will see some real transformation. It is not just as we were in the home office, but it were that companies realized what they are able to do to bring forward. And hopefully we'll not forget this, as this is for me one of the biggest, I would say, promises of the last months, that we learned black on white what many companies are capable in doing it. And if you're a leader, you should really store these experiments, document it, and always remind your people if you are, in a change management problem. So that's perhaps the biggest post-corona task, how to keep up with the current experiences and great achievements. It's quickly, and now this goes much, much faster, look into the remaining prepositions. So flexibility and agility become the basis of competitiveness. Exactly the story I mentioned before. We really realize that companies now got the impression by just looking on operational efficiency this is not enough. You will look on really other factors while you do smart manufacturing for differentiation. I explained this earlier. What we also saw is, and very quickly, is now you saw the slide, and you can look it up in more detail in the handout, but this is the digital strategy of BMW Leipzig, another host of our leadership network seminars and master classes. And here on the left, you see some of the objectives. And of course, there's operational efficiency, but also 25% volume and product mix adaptability, and especially volume adaptability is a very ambitious objective for a car manufacturer and assembly plant. And what we saw in many discussions is that there is a new kid on the block, resilience. Actually, quite old concept. And what we achieve, but it's somehow got a renaissance now. There are different ways, and we can do this in the Q&A perhaps, how to achieve resilience. But we really see it already that resilience becomes a strategic objective. And for example, we just launched a huge project called Spacer, and we actually applied for it before COVID, so we were really timed it, on scalable adaptive production systems through AI-based resilience optimization. So the idea is, how can we utilize AI to discover where resilience could come from and also to steer an organization around that line? We can go more into the Q&A session into this. There was another quite obvious trend, localization of manufacturing. And we'll say, well, we bring, and this actually is a strategy for more resilience, to bring manufacturing back closer to the markets, to not be dependent so much from distributed global supply chains. However, this also really demands new product architectures, different kind of modularity, but also different ways of process, how to design manufacturing processes. One company that got a lot of attention in the last weeks were Bright Machine, a manufacturer from the US that says we build like micro factories, and you very flexibly, very quickly can get a small factory that by far has not the efficiency of a big centralized plant, you know, in China and Mexico and so on, but it's much quicker. It has more adaptability. So we really foresee that this has been explored more. And actually, there are here in Germany some nice initiatives. Munich Re, a big reinsurance company, and I always say with probably too much money, saw a business model by teaming up with KUKA, a manufacturer of industrial robots, and MHP, this is a Porsche subsidiary, the IT company with a lot of skills on digital manufacturing, to really operate smart factories as a service, like these copy shops, you know, to make copies, you know, from your neighborhood. They say we operate these smart factories. They launched one or two, 2 or 3 years ago, got a little bit lackluster demand, but we'll see that these concepts are really coming back and see more investments here. 5, innovative revenue models are getting traction. And this is also one of the discussions we had for many, many years in Industry 4.0, but a discussion we now see really gets new, how you say, new meat and new energy. And this was around as a service or subscription models. I have here 2 nice slides stolen from Siemens. And I think most of you have heard about this everything as a service model, what you know from software, mobility, car sharing, entertainment, and so on. And it often has been proposed that for equipment manufacturers, machinery companies, asset providers, they will not sell you the asset, but they will give it to you as a service in a kind of subscription model. And there were great reasons why to do it, as less cash flow, more flexibility, often more reliability, and so on, as you create a win-win. However, despite all these great slides and proposition, these kind of subscription or as a service models never really were catching up for industrial equipment. Why? Well, as you really have to become more open. You have to share more data. You have to give an outsider more insight in what you are producing, how much, in which specifications. and many companies were not ready for this. However, now in a 90% economy, you will look for innovative strategies to save cash and investment with and have less capex. So what we foresee is that these established models are now established but not really adopted, realized models now really get a boost, as now their value proposition is more appealing for users. And here we are again in this reorganization transformation dilemma. If you really say, where do we transform ourselves if we now as a machinery company not produce and sell an asset and offer later some services, but we really operate it as a service model in a subscription where perhaps we also promise our users every year a 2% increase in efficiency, we need a really different skill set. And this is when we really enter transformation. Another element that we saw a lot in the last COVID weeks were new ecosystems and marketplaces. And we also see a dilemma here and two perhaps interesting observations. On the one hand side, at my university alone, we had at least 5 or 6 COVID-19, response platforms, all more or less with the same idea to match demand and supply. One by our textile engineers, a big industry here, is we're focusing on the need or supply of masks. Another one of our invention center, where I'm also co-director of, we have a subsidiary in Hong Kong with very good connections to the Chinese suppliers. So we said we build a platform of a little bit larger scale for all kinds of medical supply. And there were many more. There's other universities and other initiatives, there were more and more of these platforms. And of course, this cannot work. Not everyone can have a platform. Most people have to contribute to a platform, as a core mechanism of platforms and network effects. And so here we saw, I think, a loss of lost energy, very with high ambitions, but lost energies in the past weeks. And I hope that this experience will teach also companies that not every one of you guys can be a platform orchestrator. Most will be a participant in a platform. And this is important, as what happened on platforms, platform-based ecosystems in the consumer industry, like a decade or 2 decades before, is just happening in manufacturing. Actually, in our master classes, we go much more into detail here, how to do it and so on. A framework, but we saw and we predict in our white paper one core change. In most consumer platforms, we really have what we call a keystone player, a big orchestrator, a Facebook, an Amazon, a Google, one focal company that is really orchestrating, something dictating the ecosystem. For B2B, this will not work, as most of B2B companies are too complex and they don't want to, become into the dependency of a focal player. So what we predict is that we'll see much more alliance-driven platform ecosystems. And actually a great example is already since many years in the airline industry, Skywise. There's something with Nevada in mobility. Two big competitors, Class and John Deere's and Farm 36.5, they connected at the end of last year around Data Connect. And what we have here are alliances of different companies coming together to orchestrate a platform jointly. Adamos is a premier example from Germany for Industry 4.0, where 15 SMEs together said we can compete with Siemens, MindSphere, Microsoft Azure, and so on, by creating really a cooperative and orchestrate this platform together. And this is what we'll see from our discussions in the COVID crisis, that this kind of mindset really will get a reinforcement. I'll skip this. So these were the propositions on new strategic priorities, new business models. And in my last 3 minutes, let's come to new work, new organization. And obviously, and again, these are not really big news, we need new competences. The requirements for skill buildings are radically changing. And of course, we need skills how to build these business models, how to operate a subscription model, for example. But what we also see, and I think there actually is a big, to do for many companies, we really have to learn to cooperate more closely with partners, and not just with our suppliers or few key customers, but really with more open ecosystems and alliances. And really, this should be a skill available to everyone in an organization. Also, there may be changes how we work. Well, for office work, we really learned how well home offices work, perhaps sometimes too good. But at least here in my institute, my colleagues, we all feel we should come together, and more people come when our Corona measures were more relaxed. But we will keep doing work in the home office. But can there be a home office for manufacturing? Well, for an executive, yes, you have your dashboard and you may control different factories from your home. But how about an operator? Can an operator operate one or perhaps several workstations from a home office? And perhaps if this is a far-sight vision, we'll definitely get more remote services. We'll see, not just because of Corona, but this was just the reason we don't want to have so many foreign people in our plant. So we propose that virtual reality, augmented reality, collaborative robotics, and so on will get a boost. So scenarios that have been described in many years, we'll see because of just the fear to stay a little bit physical distance, will get a boost. A great example, we worked with, one of my hobbies is a company doing avatars, and we do avatars of humans. And Deutsche Telekom, T-Systems, their consulting branch, built before Corona wonderful customer engagement centers, innovation labs, where they invite their B2B customers to discuss really big, cloud solutions and so on. And because of Corona, they all had to close. And that actually was one of the biggest impact factors I heard from many executives. We can't really connect to our customers so deeply as we are used to do. And so what they have avatar-based meetings of all their core personnel and meeting with their customers in VR with really, really great results. And those things that were seen a little bit as a gimmick, as a pilot, really got a big, big boost in the last weeks. We actually use avatars for teaching. We create avatars of students and professors, and something like role plays actually work much, much better in virtual reality than in the real world. And these are already examples of flexibilization of work to really foster new forms of organizing and learning. And training will follow this. And I think I don't go into this now with too much detail, but what we also saw in the last weeks was that the traditional big and important but slow top-down strategies to really develop, a corporate capability were enhanced by lots of bottom-up experiments. And this is what's so fascinating for me in these were so fascinating for me, that really there was this freedom to operate, to experiment. And there are some companies, again, I really like the example of BMW, in addition to those that are mentioned here, which in their Leipzig-based plant really enabled, also before Corona, small innovation labs for blue-collar workers on the shop floor level, to really give them the ability to experiment with new digital tools, to make sense out of it, but also to come up really bottom up with applications, up to AI applications on the assembly line. And I think this is what we're enabled ad hoc a lot. And this is what we hope and also propose in the white paper, that this will get done more systematically and hopefully will give our people more space for doing it. And finally, perhaps an obvious point, but one that's really important for us, that we also, I think, heard a lot in the last weeks, that perhaps COVID told us about the real priorities in life, what is really mattering. And having a sustainable future definitely is. So Industry 4.0 as an enabler for sustainability is a trend that started rather late, just in the last year, at least here in Germany, but what we'll predict really will get in reinforcement. And it's not just about ecological sustainability, climate innovation, but also, as said before, about decent work, education, social participation. So here are our 10 propositions. Looking forward, what is perhaps your proposition number 11? Is there something I forgot? Well, but in our work group, we came to the conclusion that our 2030 vision for Industry 4.0 that was developed pre-COVID also is pretty stable in the post-COVID world. But the ways how to come to these, vision statements, that there perhaps, as I said, we don't really launch new things, but perhaps we got more confident and try something out. And if we manage this balance between surviving in the moment, really getting rid of these last 10% problem, or perhaps not getting rid of it, but perhaps addressing it more cleverly than our competition, then we had a lot of experience in learning to also do the transformation part really required for more differentiation. And so this slide is a slide I have since, I shouldn't say it, many years at the end of my talks, that to really benefit from Industry 4.0 and digitalization in manufacturing, you need a new value creation system. And I think all the points that I said here were valid before and are valid after COVID. And with this, I leave you and I'm open for your questions and comments at this point. Thanks a lot for listening up to here.
Thank you very much, Frank. Very insightful. As our attendees have indicated